Let me start with a confession. I didn't ever want to be an executive principal overseeing 3 schools. In fact, I never wanted to be a principal. But I was always committed to becoming the educator God was calling me to be. And so through that journey, God's taking me from being a teacher to a principal to being an executive principal. And that's something that's always been in my heart, is to follow whatever God has for me and whatever direction He'd have me go in, whether it's a challenge, whether it's the ups or the downs. I was always committed to becoming the educator God had called me to be. I'm Rhonda Davis. I'm the executive principal of GEMS Christian Education, which means I have the privilege and sometimes the challenge of overseeing 3 very different educational settings. Emerald Christian College, which is prep to Year 12, On Track College, which is a special assistance school for disengaged students, and Little GEMS, our early learning centre. Today we're not going to talk about what good teaching should look like. What we're going to do is look at some real life situations. What really happens in the classroom, what really happens within ourselves as we launch into our careers as teachers. And we're going to look at those real life situations and ask the question, what would I do? How will I grow in these types of situations? Because right now we have a lot of theory, and theory is really important. But the real skill in being a teacher is being able to apply it when the situation is complicated, unexpected, and is happening in real time. And you don't have time when you've got 25 little ones in front of you to pick up a textbook and look at what should I be doing in this moment. There are many times when situations are not textbook cases, and we need discernment and wisdom in those times. That's where teaching becomes interesting. That's where teaching becomes integrated with our faith. And that's what we want to explore today. Those moments where I don't know what to do. This is not what I planned. How do I manage these little ones? How do I manage these young people that I'm teaching in high school? I need God's wisdom in the moment, in real time. And how do we explore those things? And how do we grow from those things? Because it's in those real-time moments that's how we become the teacher that God has called us to be. And I reflect back on my first year of teaching. I was mortified with the attitude of parents. I thought, I wasn't taught how to handle these parents that are illogical, who think we're the enemy and we're not on the same side of them trying to help their child. It didn't make sense. It wasn't in the textbook. That I thought I was here to help your child, and I thought we were going to do it together in partnership. But some parents didn't see it that way. Behavior management didn't always go according to the textbook. And those real-time moments was where my faith, my theory, and my experience all had to go together to make a decision in the moment to do what's right. And they're the times when we grow the most. They're the times when we become the type of teacher that God wants us to be. Now, from that first year of not knowing how to handle parents, trying to figure out behavior management, I now spend most of my time coaching and mentoring teachers in those very 2 things. How do we explain to parents that we are partnering with them? How do we get them to understand and have confidence in what we're doing? How do we manage little ones? How do we de-escalate an argument with a high school student? How do we get young children to understand and make good choices? All those behavior management things and those abilities to be able to communicate with parents and with colleagues are things that we learn as we journey through our teaching career. And many of those learning opportunities come through real-time, difficult situations. Not from a PD, not from a textbook, but from working in the real time and having people around us, mentors that walk with us, colleagues that will support us, having leaders above us in a school that are there to guide us they're the people that you can learn from. They're the people that can help you to become the teacher that God has called you to be. Our teaching career has always got to be based on reflecting and learning. No matter how long you've been a teacher, that is always going to be the thing that will help you to become the teacher that God wants you to be. Reflect on what's happening. Learn from what's happening. Watch what's happening around you. Talk to people that you see that their classroom is what you want yours to be. Have a look at people who are great at writing curriculum. Learn from them. It's about the real-time moments that will shape you into becoming what God has called you to be. Growing as a teacher is something that you have to be very intentional about. Let me give you a couple of real-life situations. One was a teacher, a secondary teacher named Anna. She came to me asking for advice on how to behavior manage. The students were able to always bait her into losing her temper. And we worked through all the different things that she needed to do. We talked about the phrases she needed to use. We talked about the prevention strategies to put in place. And she understood that so well. She had the theory really well. But then we get into real time in the classroom and she could not bridge the gap between theory and practice. She had trouble being able to do what she actually knew was the right thing to do. And we went over things time and time again. I went into the classroom, I role modeled it for her, how to put those strategies into place, how to use the phrases that we had been looking at that would keep the behavior management where at the level where she needed it to be to teach. But we did that over and over again, and she kept having this gap between the theory and the implementation of it. And it was at that point that she stopped growing, because she wasn't able to take the theory and put it into practice. And it was many, many months before she was able to bridge that gap between theory and practice. And that's something as teachers we've got to be very conscious of. We can have so much of the correct theory, but we have to put it into practice. And not just putting it into practice, it's putting it into practice when things aren't going right, when something's not according to the textbook, when you're differentiating the right way, but it doesn't seem to be helping the student. But the textbook said, I had learned this theory, I know this educational framework so well, but in the moment, it doesn't seem to be having the effect that you want it to be. And it's in those moments when you rely on God's wisdom. As a teacher, I have prayed this prayer more than any other prayer. Lord, give me wisdom. And in that quick, silent prayer in the moment, in the middle of a classroom crisis, my faith was able to reach out to God, and he was able to give me what I needed to know in that moment. And that's where we're putting the intention of having God being a part of everything we do in the classroom and relying on his wisdom. That will help us to bridge that gap between theory and real life, especially when things in the classroom don't go according to how we planned it or how we thought it would look. Let me give you another example of the opposite. Had a teacher who was a first year teacher teaching grade 6. Her classroom noise level was so high that I don't know that the children could always hear her teaching. She did not know how to get the noise level down so that she could teach effectively. Her planning was often hit and miss, and she just was always getting upset because the parents were saying things to her about the classroom, and she was taking it personally. So by the end of the first year, she said, I feel like a failure. And that's when I met Samantha, and I started working alongside of her, and she was able to bridge the gap between theory and practice very, very quickly. By the end of the second year, she had the most well-behaved class. Her teaching was really effective. She was able to slow down, check for learning, whereas before she felt like she was surviving. She was the person that she took to heart everything I taught to her about don't take things personally when parents are upset. Let's look at what are they asking? What can I do to help them understand that we're working together as the school and the parent for the best of their child. And she put all those things into practice. She was very intentional of putting those things into practice. And one of the things that we often laughed about, like 5 years later when she was a very experienced teacher, she said to me, do you remember when I came to you and said, I'm not getting my planning done and I'm turning up Monday with things only half planned? I said, yeah, I do remember. And she said, and you said to me on a Friday afternoon, when that bell rings in the afternoon, do not clean up your classroom. Do not do anything. Sit at your desk. Reflect on how the lessons had gone that week and plan your week coming up before you do anything. And she said she started doing that straight away. And she said, I say that to new teachers all the time now. She said, I pass that wisdom on to the new teachers coming into my school and saying, hey, if you're having trouble with your planning, don't get sidetracked with the little things like cleaning up the classroom, getting that lovely visual made. If you haven't got those lessons done, you won't be growing and you won't be helping your students grow. And she was so excited that all the things that she'd learned through us mentoring together, she was now mentoring other teachers. She was passing that on. And the reason that she could grow from a struggling teacher in her first year to by year 5, she was a very competent, an excellent teacher, that she was able to mentor other new teachers was because she could bridge that gap. And she bridged that gap between theory and practice with intention. Her professional growth was intentional. And she pushed herself past her difficult comfort zones and barriers that she had in herself to be a natural procrastinator, to be a quietly spoken person, to be able to take control of the classroom, to be able to be well planned, to not take things personally when she was working with parents. She grew and became a really excellent mentor in helping younger teachers. But that's because what she did was intentional, and she pushed through those difficult, uncomfortable times of learning new skills to become the kind of teacher that God intended her to be. Being committed to your own intentional professional growth is really important, but it's also really important to keep it in a balance. We want to learn knowledge. We want to deepen our understanding of what we're teaching. We want to deepen our understanding of all different areas of educating. But we also want to develop our skills, our confidence, and our professional judgment. And it's more than just going to professional development days. Often those are the days where you're picking up a lot of knowledge. But that's not what all professional growth is. I know people that go to professional development seminars, webinars, reading books. They gain a huge amount of knowledge, but they don't balance it out with intentionally developing skills in the classroom, intentionally developing their confidence in areas where they feel challenged, and they're not intentional in developing their professional judgment of having to make a split-second decision in real time. So that's something that we have to be intentional about, is keeping that balance in our professional growth. I've seen teachers who have so much head knowledge on what teaching should look like, or huge amounts of knowledge on their specific subject area that they teach in. But they get into the classroom and that gap between knowledge and implementation lets them down because they haven't developed the skills of engaging the students in learning. They haven't developed the confidence in being able to do their behaviour management. They haven't learnt the professional judgment and how to help a child when a situation becomes difficult, or the professional judgment and how to de-escalate a difficult conversation with a parent. They have a lot of knowledge, but they didn't balance it out with skills, confidence development, and professional judgment development. So that's something to be very mindful of. There are so many teachers that chase professional development days and workshops and PDs, and they've got to read the next book, but they're just filling their growth with knowledge and not the other areas that we need to be very, very skilled in as well. Let me just give you an illustration. At the moment, I'm mentoring someone who's in a position that's very new to them, and within the first 3 days of working with me, they got an email from the parent that was quite accusing and very emotional, and they came to me and said, okay, I need to put this parent in their place, and I need to tell them that that wasn't my intention and I didn't mean it that way and you've misunderstood me. And I said, no, stop. That's not what we do. We partner with parents. And I taught him the strategy that I had been taught many years ago, that when you get that emotional email from a parent, you stop, you take the emotion out, you do not take it personally, and then you say, what is the question this parent is asking? Is it reasonable, and can I do it? And he had this blank look on his face with, no, I need to defend myself. I said, no, you don't. You need to de-escalate this. And I helped him reword his email, and then he's hovering over the send button to write this email that there was nothing defensive in it. There was just no accusations. It was just, this is what you need, and yes, we can do that for your student. And he said, but I want to defend myself. I said, no, that's not what you do in developing relationships with parents. I said, are you comfortable to push this button? He goes, oh, you are taking me to a whole new realm that I've never been in. He said, I've always wanted to defend myself. And I said, yes. And what happens? You get into an email war. Yes, you're correct, he said. And what's the outcome for the student we're trying to help? Nothing. It turns into an argument between a teacher and a parent. He said, okay, I'm going to trust you on this. It's pushing me out of my comfort zone. I'm not going to defend myself. I'm going to do exactly what you've suggested. He pushed that send button, and the parent wrote back, thank you for your understanding. I appreciate being able to work with you. And he was so shocked. He said, but I didn't get to defend myself. I said, you didn't have to. By not getting into an email war with a parent, you've showed that you care, that you're professional, and you've developed a new skill of how to de-escalate a situation that could get worse. And he said, this is something that I have never been able to learn in the years that I have been teaching. And that's something he's working on now. So he writes an email to a parent and comes and says to me, can you check this before I send it? Make sure there's no emotion in here. I'm just dealing with this in a professional way that helps the parent to be able to trust me, and that we're working together for their student. And he's putting that theory into practice and closing that gap very quickly. So that it's been intentional for him to go, this is way outside what I naturally want to do and defend myself. This is going way outside my normal comfort zone. And he can see the result is worth pushing past that. And now that's becoming more and more second nature for him to be able to do that. So he's gaining confidence in doing that. The same teacher, I just said to him recently, you need to go and talk to this student about this matter. He goes, oh, I don't know how to do that. Like, can you do it? I said, you need to go and do it. And here's the words to use. This is the approach to take. Oh, can you please do it? I said, no. I said, you go and do it. I said, because the more you do it, the more confidence you will get in being able to deal with those difficult conversations with students. And so as he's had to do the same thing over different students and having those difficult conversations, he's developing the skill to be able to do that, to talk to students and have that difficult conversation, but he's also gaining the confidence to be able to tackle it. Instead of second guessing himself, I don't know how to do that. Let me give you the strategies, let me mentor you, let me encourage you on how to do it. And he's growing very quickly and shutting that gap between, I know the theory of how to have that conversation, but I didn't have the confidence to be able to do it. And that gap is closing. So we've got to keep remembering that professional growth is not just knowledge. It's practicing the skills. It's doing things the hard way that goes against our natural comfort zone to gain the confidence. You do it more and more, and you become confident in it. And then you develop that professional judgment on what to say and when to say it. A couple of years ago, I was mentoring someone who was in the head of secondary position. And at the beginning of the year, she said, "I'm here so that you can mentor me." I said, "What do you want to work on first?" She said, "I want to learn how to have the hard conversations with the students." So that year we worked on that. And she bridged the gap between her textbook knowledge of having those hard conversations and being able to do it in practice. And by the end of the year, she said, "Oh, I can do this now. I know how to approach this. I've got the confidence to do it. I've got the confidence to follow through with those difficult conversations with students." The next year I said, "What do you want to work on this year?" She said, "Now I need to learn how to have the hard conversations with the parents." And so we worked through those strategies. We put those things into practice. And by the end of the year, she had developed excellent skills and be able to de-escalate difficult situations with parents, being able to get them to understand that she can be trusted, that she wanted to work in partnership with them and work for the best of the child together. And so the third year, I said, "What do you want to work on this year?" She said, "Well, I'm the head of a department with a lot of staff under me, and there's times when I have to have a difficult conversation with my staff. Can you help me to learn how to do that?" She said, "I have no confidence to go and talk to another adult in my staff room who's out of line, that needs to be encouraged to do better." And so we worked on that. And because she was so intentional on developing that skill, that by the end of her third year, she could have those conversations with the staff. She realized that as she had those conversations, they learned to trust her, that they were happy for her to mentor them in areas where they needed to have improvement. And so by the end of her third year, because she was so intentional with her professional growth, she had learnt to have hard conversations with students, had to have those hard conversations with parents without escalating things, and how to de-escalate those conversations. She learnt to have the conversations that were difficult with the staff that she was managing. And through all those things, she was able to flourish and grow into the sort of educator God wanted her to be. But not only that, there was a huge blessing going out across the department that she was managing, because now we have students that are confident and they could trust her and know that, hey, if we need to have a hard conversation, we can, and you're someone that I can trust. She had the backing of parents who have said, "We've worked through these hard things together and you have been such a support to help me understand what's going on." And then her staff, the morale of the whole department really rose and was so positive, because now everyone was on the same page. She was able to deal with things when there's conflict, when someone's not doing what needed to be done, people weren't meeting deadlines and letting their colleagues down, and those things that turn into difficult workplace situations. She was able to have those hard conversations, and her staff knew, hey, we can trust you to make these things come up to be. We can trust you in your decision making, and you have worked alongside us and helped us in our challenges. And they became very loyal to her, because she wasn't a manager of people, she was a mentor. She walked alongside her staff while she was learning those new skills, while she was intentionally trying to develop the things that she didn't have. She had the knowledge, she definitely had the knowledge. She didn't have the skills or the confidence to do it. But with intention, she became an excellent leader, and she's continuing to grow today. But that was intentional. Being intentional about your professional growth means you need to plan them. You need to set a goal. Where am I at right now? Where do I need to grow in my professional life as a teacher? How will I grow? And how will I know that I've reached that goal? So there's no use saying, oh, I want to be better with my behavior management. That's a good goal. But what are the steps you're going to take to get there, and what will that look like at the end? How do you want that classroom to look? then you'll know that you have got to the goal that you've set. How are you going to learn that? Are you just going to go read a book about it? Are you going to do a PD about it? Or are you going to go find a mentor? I would encourage you to look and see another teacher whose classroom looks like what you want your classroom to look like, and approach them and go, can I come and watch some of your classes? Can you give me some mentoring tips on what I need to do to grow in this area? Or if you're someone who needs some help with your planning, you might not be strong in your paperwork area, but excellent in your engagement in the classroom with students. Go find someone who has the unit plans and the lesson plans the way that you want yours to be. Don't look for someone that's different to you necessarily. Look for someone that you can see that this is what I'm aspiring to be like, because you know that the advice they give you will be the right fit for you. So we need to be intentional, but there is a warning with that. If you sit down and write down the things that you're feeling you need to work on, you might end up with 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of things like, oh, I'm not good at this. This is my first year out. I need to fix this. I need to get better at this. Don't be overwhelmed by doing that. I had a mentor teacher coach working for me in a school a few years ago, and she wrote down all the things that the grade 1 teacher needed to work on. And she had an A4 sheet of everything that this teacher needed to develop and work on. And when that teacher saw it, she was mortified. She said, I have failed. Look at this piece of paper. I'm a terrible teacher. And what that mentor had made a mistake on was showing her everything. What she should have done is said, hey, here's one thing that we're going to work on now. So if you have a lot of things in your experience as your first year teacher you want to change, write them down, put them in a priority list, but only work on one, because otherwise you will be overwhelmed trying to change everything. So what's the one thing in your classroom that you would help you the most to change first? Ask yourself that within the first few weeks of your teaching in your own classroom. Ask yourself that question. What's one thing, if I changed it or developed it, would help me in my teaching here? And then you get that to the goal that you want it to be. Then you ask yourself, what's the next thing I would like to change and grow in, and work on that one thing. And you'll find that very quickly you will grow professionally. But if you try to do 10 things at once, you will find that very difficult and overwhelming. If you have someone that's mentoring you and they do give you that big long list, don't be overwhelmed. Take it, put it into a priority list, and go back to your mentor and say, can we work on this first one together? Be intentional about your growth, but don't be overwhelmed. And especially if you're working alongside of other teachers that are very experienced teachers. So you could go, oh, I'm nothing like that. Yeah, you will be. They've been teaching 20 years. This is your first year. You'll be like that. And one day someone will say the same thing to you. But that growth will only come if you're intentional. Pick one thing in your first year of teaching that you want to improve. Work at how you're going to grow. Will it be through mentoring? Will it be through some PD? Will it be through trying to push yourself past that thing that makes you uncomfortable to develop that skill? And then can I measure where I'm at now? I'll go back to that 6th grade teacher, Samantha. She could look back after 5 years and actually laugh about where she started and where she was up to. So she said to me one day, I don't know how my students ever learnt anything in my first year of teaching, but they did. She just saw so many things that she wanted to work on and challenge, and professional things she was challenged with. And then as she looked back over the 5 years of her intentional growth professionally, she had become an excellent teacher. But she would always say, I remember where I started. And I said, but look where you are now, because you intentionally chose to take the theory and put it into practice, even when it was difficult. So don't be mortified if you find a lot of things that, hey, this is not what the textbook said in my first year of teaching. this is the answer in my textbook's not working. Yeah, that's the theory and it's correct, but sometimes it doesn't work in real time, and that's okay. That's where we rely on God and go, please show me the way forward with this child. Please show me the way that I can actually manage this new difficulty that's risen in me, because going in and do a 3, 4, 5 week prac is very different to facing the same class every day for 40 weeks. That's a very different thing. And knowing that you now are responsible to take those students you have in term 1 and grow them by the end of term 4. That's a very different experience. And you come across those real-time moments where I just don't know what to do in this situation. That's the time when you're closing the gap between your theory, which is excellent knowledge, and your practice, which is putting that into practice, using godly wisdom and discernment to bridge that gap when it happens. You need to have the knowledge, and you need to have the right knowledge. But that's not enough. You have to have the skills, the confidence, and the professional judgment to be able to implement all that knowledge in real time. Never be vague in setting your professional goals. If you set vague goals, you won't achieve them. If you have trouble breaking down your big picture challenge into smaller goals, talk to someone and say, hey, help me how to make these little steps towards the big goal that I have. So for example, it might be how do I have behavior management early and recognize things? How do I stop anything from escalating? And talk to a teacher about how they see something that's about to happen and they stop it from happening. That comes with experience. But if you can talk to other teachers who are doing it, then you'll find for example, your behavior management will different because you're bridging the gap between theory and real life. I can give you an example of that. One time I was doing the devotions in a grade 7 classroom. I was filling in for the teacher that was away, and I'm got my Bible in my hand and I'm talking to the whole class and everyone's looking at me. They looked like they were very engaged, but then I saw one of the boys was quietly, subtly trying to pull a piece of paper out from under his Bible that he was supposed to be following along with me. I knew what his intent was. I could see that he was going to pull that out and he was going to roll it up into a ball and throw it at someone. And I could just see him slowly edging the piece of paper out from under his Bible. So I just kept talking. I kept my Bible in my hand and I just kept talking to the class. I walked over. I tapped the desk where the bit of paper was. He quickly put his hands back under the chair, under the desk, on his lap. And that did not escalate into anything. But I did not learn that prevention of behavior management in my first year. That was the skill that I developed. That was something that a mentor said to me, look for ways to prevent things from escalating so you don't even have to deal with it. So that's just one example of if a first year teacher may not be able to pick up on those subtle things. Suddenly there's a piece of paper flying across the room and you have to deal with it. Develop a skill of, hey, tell me, how do you see things before they escalate? Or it could be like the teacher we talked about that was a procrastinator. How do you, as another educator, get your lesson planning done so well before Monday comes around? Because I tend to procrastinate. I want to tidy my room. I want to get that new poster up, and then suddenly it's late in the evening on a Friday night and I haven't done anything. I haven't done any reflection on the year, on the week, and what I need to do moving forward. Whatever it is that you're challenged in, look for someone who's doing it well and say, can you break this down into little steps? So my big goal, which might be behavior management, might be lesson plan writing, and might be improving my pedagogy, help me break it down into 3 or 4 little goals that will get me to my big goal, because that's manageable. And set yourself a realistic time frame of developing that skill. It won't happen straight away if you're trying to grow as a teacher. It's something that you will develop, especially if you're trying to develop a skill set or trying to develop confidence in an area. You've got to keep doing it several times over a long period of time. But the secret to growing is not giving up. So what you're trying to implement that's new is going to be hard the first time. It's going to be hard the second time. It's going to start getting easier the third, the fourth time. And you will find yourself growing in those little goals that you set towards the big goal. Then you can say, hey, I've reached step 1 of my big goal. I've reached step 2 of my goal. It could be, if we're looking at behavior management, for instance, the first step could be, I make sure the students are quiet when they're lined up outside before we walk in. Step 1. That's step 1. It's just, I need to have them quiet and ready to learn before we walk in the door. And then step 2 would be, okay, what's the very first thing I have to say and do to make the students be engaged, not lose them before we even start? What will step 3 look like in my behavior management? Break them down. It's not about the big goal. It's about the little goals, the little steps that will get you there. So make sure your professional goals are not vague. Get someone to help you with setting those little goals to get to the big goal, because you will grow quicker that way, and it'll be less frustrating and less overwhelming to set the little goals that lead to the big goal. In the first 5 years of your teaching career, you will see the most growth in yourself as a professional educator. The first year, everything is new, everything feels overwhelming, everything feels difficult. But as you grow, you will find by the 5th year, you are exponentially a much different teacher. I walked into a new school once as a principal, and I started going into each of the classrooms, and I sat and watched this young teacher teaching grade 2. And her classroom was just so well taught. Her lessons were so engaging. And at the end of the lesson, I said to her, how long have you been teaching for? You seem to be like a teacher who's been teaching 5 years. And she said, I've been teaching 5 years. She was very much a mature, confident person, but she said, I wasn't like this in my first year. My first year, I was hesitant. I over-planned. I had too much content. I was so worried about getting through content that my lessons become disengaging. But what I saw at the 5th year mark was an excellent teacher. So for her, she said, from my first year to my 5th year, I have grown a lot. And that's very common for anyone who's intentional in growing professionally as a teacher. You'll find from your first year to your 5th year is when a lot of growth will happen if you are intentional. By the 5th year, you will be ready to take on extra things. You'll be, whatever you're passionate about, whether it's curriculum writing, whether it's extra curricular opportunities, the 5th year is when you can do that with a lot of confidence and comfort, because you've grown so much as a classroom teacher. You're now ready for that new challenge, that extra challenge. Some first year teachers, and many do, they want to do all those extra things in the first year. That come in ready to change the school. But you've got to really focus on the first year is your season to learn how to be a really good teacher and put that knowledge you have into practice. Focus your first year on your classroom, on your students in your classroom. Yes, you might have lots of great ideas of what you want to put in your extra clubs for the other students, and you want to run with these great ideas for the whole school. They're great, but the first year is not the season to do that, because you will burn out. And I've told several teachers that in their first year, but they still want to run with an idea. And by the middle of the year, they say, you're right. I shouldn't have taken on that chess club. I shouldn't have taken on that extra footy coaching after school. I need to focus on just becoming a good teacher in my first year and learning what my strengths are, learning what my weaknesses are, so that I can start setting myself some professional goals. So learn that each of the first 5 years of your teaching career are a different season. The first year is learning how to become that teacher that you have all the theory for and putting that into practice, closing the gap in your first year between theory and real world implementation of that theory. Second year, start really focusing on intentional professional development. Third year, start looking at ways that you can help others. Now you've got first and second year teachers below you that you have more experience in. Hey, my first year, yeah, I had the same problem. This is how I worked through it. You can, if you mentor others, and it doesn't have to be formally, it can just be you've developed a relationship with other teachers and you talk about it in the staff room. You have those quiet conversations with people who say, hey, I don't know how to handle this one student that I've got. I don't know how to differentiate for this problem. You say, oh, I've had that as well when I was teaching in my first year. This is what I did. Would that help you? Ask those informal discussions can be the greatest professional growth that you can have. Don't be afraid to go to your head of department. Don't be afraid to go to your principal and say, I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm struggling in this area. Is there another teacher that could help me with that? A good leader will always want you to grow. So if you've got a head of department or a principal that you can trust, that you can go to and say, hey, I'm wanting to grow. This is an area I'd like to grow in. Can you point me in the right direction? Who else in this school is really good at that? At the moment, I have an excellent teacher in grade 1 who knows how to teach from a Christian worldview in every subject. It's natural. She just does it in such a good way. And she also is excellent at teaching literacy. She'll have half her class will start grade 1 with learning problems. By the end of the year, they're all reading at or above grade level. She's doing something really well in literacy. She's doing something really well in teaching from a Christian worldview and teaching those godly principles to those young students. When someone comes to me and said, hey, how do I write my curriculum from a Christian worldview and make it stronger? She's the person I send them to. She never goes looking for people to mentor. She's just a quiet teacher who gets on with the job. But if I ask her to, hey, can you help someone here writing their curriculum to ensure it's from a biblical worldview, she does it, and she does it really well. Going into her classroom and seeing how she puts literacy into every subject is amazing. So our early years teachers, they go watch her teach for a while. Go talk to her about how she strengthens the literacy skills of those students in such a natural way. But that's all informal mentoring. It's peer mentoring. It's going, hey, I'm really good at this. This is my strength. How can I help someone else? Hey, this is my area of weakness. Who in my school can help me with this? And it's that daily one-on-one that helps you to grow. Go do a PD. That's great. That's a once-off thing. But if you've got someone walking the journey with you as a professional on a day-to-day basis, that's what's going to help you to grow and to be able to bridge that gap between the knowledge you're learning and the real world teaching in the real moment. At the moment, I have 2 heads of departments that I'm mentoring, and they are in my office 2 or 3 times a day because we're doing our mentoring in real time. They'll come in and say, this just happened. Can you help me to know how to deal with it? Or I've just got this email from a parent. Could you help me to know how to handle it because I haven't come across this before? And so those real-time mentoring moments are having the greatest effect on those 2 staff members than if I sent them away for a one-off PD. Get the PD training, but get those colleagues that you can do the journey with, that you can sit around the table and just put everything down and go, look, these are the things I'm doing well, these are the things I'm struggling with. How can we work this together? How can you help me? It's everyday mentoring, coaching, encouraging, supporting that is going to help you to grow. And as you help others grow, you will grow yourself. So it's really important that you realize that the first 5 years of your teaching career are going to be 5 different seasons. And don't rush the seasons, especially the first one. When you've got all those great ideas that are bigger than just your classroom, put them on hold to the 2nd or 3rd year, because the first year is really about bridging the gap between our knowledge and our real time in the classroom. Professional growth really is dependent on reflection. So if you've had something happen during the day, stop and reflect on it. You go, at what point did something go wrong? At what point did I perhaps have the wrong judgment? Try to pinpoint that. And as you reflect on that, then you can reflect on what could I do next time this happens. reflect on something that went really well today. That's really important that you also reflect on the good things. So you can say, hey, that went really well, and that went really well because this is the way that I approached it. So don't just reflect on the things that need improving, reflect on the things that you're doing well, because you need to be kind to yourself. You need to not only look for ways to grow, you need to be able to build your own confidence in the things that you already know that you have strengths in. So reflect on the positive of the day, but also reflect on anything that was bothering you through the day so that you know how to improve on that. And if someone comes along and criticizes you, whether that's another colleague, whether it's a head of a department or your principal, or if someone comes and criticizes what you're doing in your classroom, our immediate reaction is to be defensive and go, oh, how dare you? I'm not like that at all. Just stop. Just stop. Go away and think about what they said. Maybe 99% of their criticism was wrong and unjustified. But is there some little thing in this that I can take and actually grow from? They may be saying, hey, how dare you, you did this, you did that. You say, no, that wasn't my intention. Okay, it wasn't your intention. Don't be defensive. Don't get upset. Don't discount it. Go away and think, hey, what did I do that made them misunderstand my intention? So that 1% in that criticism can help you to grow. Okay, my intention wasn't that, but I'm not going to be defensive. I'm going to reflect on it and go, 99% of what my colleague said is not true. But that 1% I can think about and go, they misunderstood my intention. So I'm going to reflect on that 1% and how can I approach the situation next time so my intent is not misunderstood. So even taking an unfair statement or an unfair criticism, don't just brush it off and be defensive. Go away and have a think, is there anything within this that I can learn from? It might be that 1%, but that'll be something that will help you to grow. There may be nothing in it. It might be 100%. Oh, that was all rubbish. I'm not taking any of that on board, that there was just someone who was having a bad day and took it out on me. But don't dismiss it. If you're criticized, stop and reflect and see if there's something, a little nugget within that criticism that you can actually turn into something positive for yourself. Intentional professional growth definitely comes through relationships. Develop relationships with your colleagues. Develop relationships with the head of your department. Develop relationships with your principal. They're the places where you can learn. They're the places that you can help grow from day to day. Seek out people that can mentor you. Seek out people that you want to have those professional conversations with. But always be open to feedback. Feedback will be positive, and sometimes feedback will be challenging. We don't want to hear the challenging feedback, but the challenging feedback is what helps us to grow. They're the things that help us to make intentional goals for our growth. But also look for ways that you can support other teachers. What can you do to help someone else in an area that they need support in? And by doing that, you'll also grow. So you grow through having relationships with people that can help you to grow. You can grow through feedback, and you can grow through helping others. They're 3 intentional things that you can do in developing relationships with your colleagues, your mentors, and your leaders. Most of the teachers, when they arrive at school, put their head in my office and say hello. Just good morning. Others come in and go, oh, I need to ask you about this today. And those mentoring moments and those relationship building moments are happening all day, throughout the day. And the 2 heads of departments that I'm currently mentoring, I joke with them, say, you're in my office so much, I'm going to put another 2 desks in here for you 2. But they don't wait till our mentoring session to ask their questions. They ask it in real time so they can deal with it in real time. And when they do that, they don't forget it, because it's not theory. It's, I need your advice and I need it now. I need a strategy and I need it now. And they go and put it into practice immediately, and it's then in their heart and their mind for next time. It's not theory, because they've lessened the gap between theory and real time instantly, because we're doing that all day. For me, that means I have to be committed to interruptions all day. And that's okay, because my commitment is to grow people. My commitment is to growing staff. My first responsibility, I always say this to my staff, my first responsibility is to look after you. So you're never interrupting me. You're never taking up my time, because that's what I'm here to do. As the executive principal of 3 schools, my job list, my task list every day is a mile long. The administration load is huge, but I never ever put that above relationships and mentoring staff, because as a leader, the most important thing in my school is my staff. And so for you, you may not be a leader. You might be that first year teacher. You might be that second year teacher. Your priority should be in you growing and you helping others grow, because this is about relationship. This is about a ministry that God's called us to do, and we're cheering each other on. We're supporting each other in our ministry. It's not about a competition. It's not about who can be the best grade 7 teacher. No, it's about, hey, we're both grade 7 teachers. How can we work together for the sake of our students? We're ministering together to be able to minister to these students. How do we do that together? Work on your relationships. Don't be a lone ranger. You won't grow. Seek a mentor. Seek people that you can talk to on a daily basis. Things that you can, hey, I did this really well today. This really worked. I had a challenge with this. Can we throw some ideas around and develop some strategies? Be open to that feedback. Be committed to relationships that help you grow and you help others to grow. I just had a conversation today with someone. We have a staff member that's going to leave very soon. And they said, oh, they've just become such a good teacher over the last few years. It's a pity to leave them. I said, hey, remember the big picture. This is not about the school. This is about growing people. That teacher came in as a first year teacher, and now several years later, they are a very professional teacher. They're an excellent teacher. They're helping others. We may be losing them because they've got to go somewhere else to be with family. But we know that they're moving on and have grown in their ability to serve God as an educator. It's about growing people. So I can lose a teacher. They have to move on for family reasons. But I know that we've done our job, that we have helped them to grow, and now they're ready to move on to the next season where God will call them and grow them in the next season of their life. Focus on growing. Focus on intentionally growing. Focus on intentionally helping others to grow. And that will make a huge difference in your own professional growth and life as you work through your career. Professional growth as an educator has to always go hand in hand with our calling as a Christian. Our professional growth as an educator always goes hand in hand with our faith. Everything we do, everything we say, whether it's in the classroom or in the staff room, is going to reflect our faith. It's going to be part of our testimony. Every decision we make, every word we say in our classroom, is it honoring to God? As a leader, I'm very, very conscious that every decision I make at a school level has to be honoring to God. I don't want to make a decision that has no integrity or falls into a grey area, because I know that that's not going to be honoring to God. And I don't want to ever be the one that dishonors God in this ministry and we lose the blessing of God on our school. So I'm very conscious that everything I do as a leader, every decision I make needs to reflect what God wants me to be and needs to reflect my values and my faith, because I'm a testimony to God in my workplace. This is a Christian school and we're reflecting our values and we are reflecting who God is to our community. So for you as a teacher, the way you speak to the parents, the way you speak to your colleagues, the way that you handle yourself in the classroom, is that honoring to God? Is that in alignment with your Christian values of what God wants you to be and how God wants you to behave, how God wants you to speak? That's something to reflect on. That's a stewardship of what God's given us. As a Christian educator, it's more than just academics. We are teaching our students academics, and that's really important to do that well. But we're also teaching them in their own faith journey. And that's something to be mindful of. What am I reflecting to my students? When they see me, do they see God's love? Do they see God's compassion? As I walk each child's journey with them, are they seeing a God in me that cares? We have to never take faith out of our professional growth. Our faith has to be growing as our professional growth grows. And always remembering that if we're being called to be an educator, we've been called to serve. And we've been called to serve in a ministry that is having an opportunity to disciple children every day. If you have a class of 25 students, you have an opportunity to disciple in their faith of 25 young lives every day. That's a huge challenge, but it's an amazing ministry that you have. You have 25 lives every day for the whole year that you can help to know Jesus. Yes, they're going to do well academically because we've learnt those skills. We've learnt that knowledge of how to teach the academics. But you have an equally important job to help each one of your students in their faith journey. As educators, we never arrive. We're still learning. We're still reflecting. We're still learning and developing who we are. Whether you've been teaching for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we're lifelong learners as educators. We always need to remain humble. We always need to be reflecting. We always need to be asking questions so that we can be committed to our own professional growth always. There's never an end point because we will always be learning. And it's important to remember that what we're doing is for God. This is a ministry. It might be a school that you're working in, but if you're in a Christian school, it's a Christian ministry. Not just ministering to students, but ministering to their families. And I get excited when I start hearing parents tell me how they're on a spiritual journey because of what their child is learning in school. I had a parent come to me recently and she said, I need to tell you this. I said, we've never done anything to do with church or God. I knew nothing about God, she said. And she said, now our daughter keeps coming home from grade 4 and telling us all the things she's been learning about God. And she said, we started getting really curious about all these things she was telling us. Said, so we are now going to church every Sunday because we want to learn more about God. And she's become someone that is just soaking in everything she can learn about faith. And she's on this journey that started in the Christian school. So not only are we ministering to our students, we have an opportunity to change families. We can change students' lives. We can change families' lives. And as we change families' lives, we can change communities. So as a Christian educator, you have a huge calling, a huge ministry, 25 lives every day, those students that you can help on their faith journey. And in so doing, you can help the families of those children in their faith journey, which is going to have an impact on your community for God. Keep growing as a professional. Keep growing in your faith, but always keep those two intertwined. I'm a professional educator. I'm a Christian professional educator, and my faith is a very strong part of my educational growth.